Hello, Year 11. So this is your assembly about approaches to mock exams and also giving you information about what we know so far about your GCSE exams in 2021. So what do we know so far about next summer's exams? Well, what we do know is that the government announced on the 12th of October that exams will go ahead next summer and that there will also be contingencies for all possible scenarios. Those contingencies are not yet clear. The government is consulting on those over the next 6 weeks. But what they're looking at is ways to make exams completely fair if, for whatever reason, the pandemic might disrupt the exam season. So that might include Year 11s having to self-isolate at home and being educated remotely. It might mean potentially if students have to self-isolate during the exam season itself, how we can support fair grading for those students. And as I say, we don't know what those contingency plans might be yet. As soon as we do, we will let you know. What we might think it might mean though is that any work, any assessment, any test you do this year might be used to support your final grade in the summer, and that obviously includes your mock exams. So if you're able to show us what you're capable of doing in your mock exams, that evidence is really worth its weight in gold if your teachers have to rely on it in the future to suggest what grade you might be capable of if the real exam season is disrupted. Obviously, our hope is that exams go ahead smoothly in summer 2021 and that you are able to show your best performance in those exams next summer. But we have to be realistic and prepare ourselves for any possibility. And that includes the fact that exams may be disrupted by the pandemic as it continues on its path. Within that announcement by the government, there was some further detail as well just around the dates. So we know that the summer exam season will start on the 7th of June and end on the 2nd of July. We also know in further details that were announced that there'll be one GCSE English and one GCSE Maths paper in the week before the May half-term holiday, just to make sure that any students who are caught up in self-isolation will be able to sit at least one GCSE Maths and one GCSE English exam. But the rest of the exams will take place after the May half-term break. It was also announced that GCSE Results Day will be on Friday the 27th of August, which seems like a long time away, but will come around sooner than you might think. So in terms of your mock exams, those exams start on the 23rd of November and complete on Monday the 30th of November. And our intention is to treat them like the real thing as far as we can. So we're going to assess and grade your mock exams using the real GCSE mark schemes and the most recently available GCSE grade boundaries to give you a real sense of where you're at now in relation to your exam performance in November 2020. We're going to apply the exam rules and regulations just as we would for the real exams, and we'll talk a bit more about those later in the assembly. And we want you to revise and prepare for your exams as if they were the real thing too, so that you can show us what you're really capable of doing in these GCSE exams. So let's start by talking about revision a little bit and how you revise for any exams, including your mock exams and your real GCSEs. So I've been doing some reading about this, looking into the Association for Psychological Sciences research papers into the most effective learning techniques. And this paper has been particularly interesting in terms of looking at which techniques for revision, which techniques for learning are the most effective in ensuring that you can remember what it is that you revised when you come back to try and repeat it later. What this research paper shows us is that there are some techniques that are not very effective, and that includes highlighting as a not very effective technique for revision. Just going through your notes and highlighting the key words does not necessarily mean that you're going to remember what those key words were when you come to an exam situation later on. Similarly, just rereading your notes is not a very effective technique for actually remembering what it is that you revised later. So why is this? Well, the research paper suggests that those techniques that I've just described, highlighting and rereading and similar, are quite low challenge techniques. They don't require you to think very hard about the material that you are revising. So you might look through it, you might read it carefully, but actually it doesn't require you to think, and the material can effectively pass through your brain without really being engaged at all. It might make you feel like you've done some revision. You might be able to go downstairs proudly and show your mum or your dad loads and loads of highlighted pages, but actually that time isn't necessarily very well spent if you're not going to remember it afterwards. And what the researchers tell you, or tell us, is that revision learning should be hard work. And the harder you work your brain, the more chance you have of remembering what it is that you've been thinking about. So one of the researchers from that study, Daniel Willingham, summarised it like this: whatever you think about, that's what you remember. Memory is the residue of thought. So when you really think about something hard, it leaves like a trace behind, like a residue behind in your brain, and that gives you a better chance of remembering it when you come to try and recall it later on. So the harder you think, the harder you engage with the material that you're trying to learn, the more chance you've got of recalling that information later on. So the research paper goes on to identify some more effective study techniques and ways which might help you to revise more effectively. One of the most effective ways of revising, the researchers tell you, is practice testing. That's getting past paper questions or practice questions for the exams that you'll be sitting and having a go at them without your notes in front of you. So you put your notes and your textbooks away and your revision guides away. You get a practice question in front of you and you have a go at answering that question with the information that you have in your brain. And the act of trying to pull that information out of your memory into onto the page of your practice question is a great way of actually helping to secure that pathway in your head so that you can remember the information that you're trying to later on. Once you've done your practice question, go back to your notes, your revision guides, your textbooks, and check, did you get the answer right? What did you include? What did you miss? Double check everything, make sure you can see where you've gone wrong, see where you've gone right, then put your notes away again and have another go. And then again, that process of pulling the information out of your memory and onto the page is a great technique for revision. Another great technique is elaboration, and this graphic that I've got on this slide here is supposed to illustrate the idea of detail, lots and lots and lots of detail. So with this technique, what you're looking to do is to pick a topic that you're trying to revise. Let's say in biology you want to revise plant cells. You would get a blank sheet of paper, again put your notes and your textbooks and your revision guides away, get a blank sheet of paper, write plant cells at the top of the page, and then from memory write down as much detail as you can remember about plant cells. Draw a diagram, label it, write down as much detail as you possibly can. When you've exhausted everything you know about that topic, you go back to your notes and textbook, see what you got right, see what you got wrong, see what you missed, revise all that through, and then put that notes away again, another blank sheet of paper, start again, and see if you can add more detail than you did the last time. And that process, again, of pulling the information out of your memory, putting it onto the page, is a great way of ensuring that you can remember it later. And that will work for any topic, whether that be in sciences or in English. You might want to put down a particular character from one of the texts that you've been studying, or a particular topic area from your geography or from music, whatever it might be. That process of pulling information out of your memory and putting it down onto the page in as much detail as possible is a great technique for revising. The mock exams are as much about you finding what works for you in terms of revision as they are about the actual grade themselves. So trying these techniques, seeing which ones are most effective for you, that's kind of the best way of approaching this. And I guess the acid test will be, if you've done an hour's revision, you should be tired afterwards. If you've done an hour's proper revision, it should have been really hard work. You should have really had to work your brain. You'll need a break after an hour's revision. And if you don't need a break after an hour's revision, I would suggest you probably haven't worked your brain hard enough during that period. So after that hour's hard revision, make sure you take that break, give yourself an hour or half an hour or so, get some fresh air, get out, do some exercise, just get some downtime and relax yourself so that when you go back to do some more revision, you're fresh and ready to go again. Okay, the second half of this assembly is around the actual practical arrangements for your mock exams. So let's go through some of those now. So let's start with your mock exam timetable. You can find that in Insight itself. So if you log into Insight, you will find a little icon that looks like this that says examination timetable in the top menu bar. When you click on that, you will find your exam timetable for your mocks. And here is an example of a GCSE student's mock exam timetable. And you can see on this screen the dates in the left-hand column, the start times of those exams, which are either going to be period 1 or period 3, and the topics for those exams in the component column, and finally the length of time that the exam will take. Over the next couple of weeks, you will also start to see the room and seat columns being populated as we room those exams. Don't assume that you'll be in the same room or sitting next to or in the same row or column as students in the same class as you. That's not how we organise the exams at all. So it's important to make sure that you know, for you as an individual, which room you're in and which seat you're sitting in, and you can find that information in Insight. We do put the seat numbers on a list outside the exam hall as well, but it's really not necessary for you to check that. You should already know your seat from Insight before you go into the exam hall, so only check the list if you've forgotten or if you just need to reassure yourself of which seat you're sitting in. So when you go into the hall, you will see that there are kind of labels on the wall. There are columns which have letter codes, and there are rows which have number codes. So if you are sat in seat D4, you'll be looking to sit in the 4th row of the 4th column, and you'll see a little coloured desk card on the exam desk there, which will look something like this. And on that desk card, it will have your name, it will have your details, your personal details, and it will tell you which paper it is that you are sitting. Or just check those details, make sure they're all correct when you sit down. And if there's any problems at all, put your hands up and speak to one of the invigilation staff in the exam. So when you're in the exam hall, obviously you're in silence from the minute you walk through the door, and the invigilation staff are there to support you and help you through the process. So we employ exam invigilators to come in and support the exams process with you. They are academy staff. We appoint them and we employ them, and we expect you to treat those members of staff with the utmost respect. They're coming in to help you in your exams and make sure that everything runs smoothly for you, and we want to be very, very clear that if there are any instances at all of any student in the school who does not treat our invigilation staff with respect, we will come down on you like an absolute ton of bricks. You have been warned. We want to make sure that these exams run very smoothly, not just for the benefit of those invigilation staff, but for the benefit of every student who is taking exams at Churchill. It needs to be an absolutely smooth process, and those staff are there to make sure that that happens. The rules and regulations are set by the Joint Council for Qualifications, JCQ, and Mrs. Shipway, our exams officer, is responsible for making sure that all students and staff follow the exam rules and regulations. Mrs. Shipway is assisted by Mrs. Hudson and Mrs. Blinston in the exams team, and of course the invigilation staff who I've already mentioned. My role in all of this is a legal one. I am legally responsible for ensuring that all exams at Churchill are carried out within the regulations, and I have to sign those regulations off in order for us to be legally allowed to hold GCSEs and A-levels and so on at Churchill. So it's absolutely essential that I am completely confident that all the rules and regulations have been followed, because if they haven't, we run the risk of not being allowed to hold GCSEs and A-levels here, and you can imagine how serious that would be. So it's my legal responsibility to make sure that we do this properly. The most important rule and regulation that you must remember is that you cannot bring any item into the exam hall which is in any way internet or web enabled or could be used to communicate with anybody else. So that's mobile phones, any smart watches, any device at all that could be used as a communicator must be left outside the exam hall. It did happen in 2019. A Year 11 student forgot that he had his mobile phone in his pocket, and he was sitting a science exam, and the phone was discovered. It fell out of his pocket and was found. There was no intention there to cheat at all. He'd just simply forgotten that it was there, but unfortunately that student was disqualified from his science GCSEs, and that 3 years worth of work that he'd done towards that exam was wasted because he'd forgotten that he had his phone in his pocket. So you must check with one another, check with yourself, make sure that you've put everything that you're not allowed to have in your bag before you come into the exam hall, please. Disqualification is really serious. You could be disqualified from a paper, from a subject, from the exam board, from all the exams in the summer, or for up to 5 years if they found that there's a deliberate intention for you to cheat. So don't risk that, please. Make sure that you follow the rules really carefully. A few do's and don'ts for your exams then. This is for mock exam for the real thing. So make sure you read the question very carefully, follow the instructions on the exam paper, and think about your answer. Don't answer the question you wish you were asked. Answer the question you've actually been asked. You must write in black pen, and that's because the exam papers in the real GCSEs and A-levels are scanned in by computer and sent to markers electronically. So it's got to be in black to enable that process to work. You do diagrams in pencil, and you bring any equipment in a clear pencil case so we can see what's in there and make sure there's nothing that shouldn't be there. If you make a mistake, cross it out with a single line, just in case that mistake was actually the right answer, and maybe the examiner can see that and give you credit for it. And if you are doing any rough work, that needs to be done on the exam paper itself. So don't write in any other colour, don't write in blue, don't write in green, don't write in pink. You must write in black pen. Don't use any Tipp-Ex or correction fluid, just a single crossed out line is fine. Don't bring anything into the exam that you don't need for that exam. So just bring the stuff that you need for that exam. And you must not bring any labelled water bottles. So if you've got a label on your water bottle, that label has to come off. It needs to be a clear bottle. And in fact, you can't bring any writing at all into the exam. So there can't be any writing on your hands or arms or legs or wherever. Don't write on yourself. No bits of paper with writing on at all. Don't write your seat number on your hand, because that also counts. You must make sure that there's nothing on you at all that could be seen to be in any way against the exam rules and regulations. Make sure that you are squeaky clean. And another big no-no is communicating with others. So from the minute you walk through the door into the exam hall, you should be in absolute silence. That, I suppose, is a given. But communication with others isn't just about you talking to somebody else. If you exchange a glance with somebody else, if you're mouthing words, if you're gesturing with your hands to somebody else, any of that is communication with others. And all of that must be reported by the invigilators to the examiner's officer and to me as head of centre. And we must report that to the exams regulator. So when you go into the exam hall, you need to imagine you've got blinkers on so that you're going to go straight to your seat. You're going to sit down and focus on your paper and focus on your exam only. I understand the impulse of wanting to look at your friend and look around and say, it's going to be okay, we got this, or whatever that might be. But in doing that, you're not only jeopardizing your own exam, but you're also jeopardizing their exam too, because communication obviously involves at least 2 people. And if the invigilators see that happening, they will report it, and you do risk being disqualified, as does the person that you're trying to communicate with. So please don't risk that. Go straight into the exam, settle to your paper, and you do your exam. So these are the final reminders, just to run through what I've said to you over this assembly. We've talked about your timetable. We've talked about the equipment that you need. We've talked about going in. So you line up on the Hanover side of the bag shed. You leave your bags and anything that you're not allowed in the bag shed. When you're in the exam, you enter calmly and in silence. There is a seating list there if you need it, but hopefully you will already know your seat number. Your desk card is there to help you check that it's your desk. The invigilators are there to help you. So if there is a problem, please let us know as soon as possible. The sooner we know about a problem, the sooner we can fix it. And after all, our aim, just like your aim, is for you to do as well as possible in these exams. So if there's anything at all that might get in the way of that, any problem that might prevent you from doing your very best in your exams, the sooner we know about that problem, the sooner we can do something about it. So please let us know if there's anything at all that might prevent you from doing your best in your exams, and then we'll see if there's anything we can do to help support you to get through that problem. The final message from me is the best of luck to you all. This is a really unusual and difficult year for you. You didn't ask for this. You don't deserve to have this level of disruption in your GCSE year. But that is the world that we are in, and it's the job of us as the staff here at Churchill to support you through this process to make sure that you have the very best possible chance of success, to support you with your learning, to support you with your revision, and to support you through your exams at all times. So please continue to talk to the staff, talk to us all about the way that you're approaching these exams. Ask us for advice. We're here to help you, and I hope that your exams, both your mocks and the real thing, go as smoothly and as successfully as possible. Thank you so much for listening.